So what do you get when you cross peanut butter with chocolate? A Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. What do you get when you cross a Shirogorov Hati with a Shirogorov Neon? You get a HatiOn. Shirogorov is a Russian company run by Sergei Shirogorov. Formerly, the lightest Shirogorov was the Neon Ultralight seen here at 3.0 ounces. It had a standoff and a pivot and was just a simple, beautiful knife. Now they made the HatiOn, which is a combination between the Hati and the Neon. You get it, the first part, Hati, Neon, HatiOn. It sounds better than Niati, I think. But let me back up a little bit. Shirogorov made a knife with a simple shape. They made a great knife. Its shape was simple both in the blade and the handle size. They made it in two different sizes with only minor variation. The larger one, which had a 95 millimeter blade, they called the F95 for the size of the blade. The smaller one with an 80 millimeter blade they called the Neon. It's basically the same knife with some minor variations. The handle on the Hati has a second recurve, and as you can see, the handle on the Neon doesn't have that second recurve. The backspacer on the Hati had a gear pattern, whereas the Neon light had just 3 small transverse lines on its backspacer. The F95 is a full titanium knife. The Hati is basically an F95 in both size and shape, but with a carbon fiber or G10 show side scales. Here we see the F95 and the Hati. Again, we'll compare it, the F95 and the Hati. You get the idea. It's the same size and shape knife with some minor variations. Maybe that's an oversimplification, but that's the way I see it. The Shirogorov Neon comes in a couple of varieties. The light, which has a backspacer, and the ultralight, which has this standoff. Let's talk about the specifications of the knife we're reviewing today, the HatiOn. The blade length is 3.25 inches, and it has a handle length of 4.25 inches, giving a total knife length of 7.5 inches. The weight of the knife is 2.4 ounces. And we have the comparison of the Neon Ultralight. As you can see, they're basically exactly the same knife and exactly the same shape. We have the Clyde Challenor Talon, which is pretty much the same size. The Zero Tolerance 0450, which is the same size. And lastly, the William Henry B7, which is slightly smaller. The blade of the knife is made of M390 steel. It has a full flat ground configuration and a drop point. On the back of the blade, there is a little bit of jimping for better purchase. The method of deployment of the knife is by flipper. It flips nicely, and with the multi-row bearing system returns nicely also. The handle is made of a 3D machined carbon fiber, which in the certificate of authenticity is called carbon fiber white. I have a picture of the inside of the carbon fiber. I disassembled it for you so that you could see it. And so here is what it looks like on the inside before they machine it. And then as you can see on the outside, much like the Hati, it's not machined in straight line. It has this sweeping downward, leveling off, and then sweeping downward again, which gives it a little bit of interest. On the clip side, it has the similar lines to the Shirogorov, but they didn't fully machine it. They just have a couple of lines. I'll bring the Shirogorov off to compare it. In the Shirogorov Neon, they fully machined that little area, and in the Hati they didn't. However, in the HatiOn CD custom division, they did do that full milling. The construction of the knife includes a backspacer, which has 3 small transverse lines. It extends about half the length of the handle. The backspacer includes a lanyard hole, which is minimal on the profile view, which I really like because I personally don't use backspacers, and you think, wow, how could I ever get a lanyard in there? Well, they engineered it so that they cut out part of the handle scales to give you more area to put in a a lanyard, you would have to grab it with some hemostats or a paper clip or something. It might be a little tricky jamming it through there and making a 180-degree turn, but they engineered it so that it could happen. So I like the backspacer. The pivot of the knife have these proprietary pivots, and I wanted to show it a little bit because they're proprietary, yet at the same time they can use a flat-headed screwdriver to undo them. I like that, where they make something simple that you can use normal tools to disassemble it with. I have an example I want to compare it to that also had the same idea, the Clyde Challenor pivot. It's proprietary, it's beautiful, it just doesn't look like a slot, but you can at the same time use a flathead screwdriver to disassemble it. I really like that. The pivot employs the Shirogorov multi-row bearing system. Each side of the blade rides on 7 sets of 2-ball bearings, 14 bearings per side, 28 bearings in all. This is the secret sauce that makes Shirogorov actions so smooth. The lock on the knife is a frame lock. As you can tell, we have an early lockup. It's maybe about 20%, and it locks up securely. There's no blade play. It centers perfectly, no problem there. The pocket clip on the knife is a 3D milled titanium pocket clip that's tapered at the tail end. It's screwed internally so that you don't have any tacky outer screw hardware. And the lockup, you have the lock bar cut out inside, so all the mess is basically kept inside. The signage on the knife is minimal. On the show side, it has the Shirogorov bear. On the regular neon, the bear is on the handle of the blade, but because this is carbon fiber, they chose to put it on the proximal part of the blade. On the custom division, they put the bear at the tail of the handle, but they colored it blue so that it would stand out. Looks pretty sharp. And on the clip side, the only thing on the knife as far as signage goes is the steel designation, which in this case is M390. So how do you buy one of these HatiOns? Recon One sells them. They boast that they are the only authorized Shirogorov dealer in the United States. However, Knife Center and other retailers have sold them in the past, so I don't really know what that means. You can certainly get them on the secondary market also, although that's a little risky. Shirogorov is one of the most copied knives from the Chinese knockoff artists in China. Be sure to get the card of authenticity. I'll show you the paperwork that comes with it. You get this card that has the specification of the knife and the Shirogorov stamp. This is all written in Russian, and my Russian is a little weak, so I won't talk much about that except to say that it exists. Here's the certificate of authenticity. It has the HatiOn Light, the steel type, which is M390, the multi-row bearing system, the type of handle scale, which is carbon fiber white in this case, and a serial number and the date of manufacture. On the other side, there's the Shirogorov maker's mark, the bear, and also there's a stamp which is kind of a hologram looking thing with some Russian writing and the Shirogorov bear. So make sure before you buy something that poses itself as a Shirogorov HatiOn that you had the certificate of authenticity and the correct paperwork. So you can also buy these from Russian providers like Reus Blades, which is where I got mine. I ordered it and paid for it, and 27 days later it showed up at my doorstep in my mailbox. The shipping was about $10, which to me is a little remarkable that you can ship a package halfway across the world for only $10, but that's the truth. That's how it happens. Something that was more expensive in the purchase was that you have 2 currency exchanges. Reus Blade advertises the knife in dollars but sells them to you in rubles, and they give you a poor exchange rate from dollars to rubles. And then you pay for it through PayPal. Well, PayPal, if you have rubles, I guess they would accept it. I don't happen to have any rubles, so I paid for it in dollars. PayPal exchanges it to rubles, so you have a dollars to rubles exchange through PayPal, and then a rubles back to dollars exchange by Reus Blades. and they give you bad exchanges both ways. It cost me about $50 to get through that, so it's $60 in all in addition to the price of the knife, but it ended up being only 6.6% of the sale price, so I figure this is less than most city and state sales tax, so I just paid the money and got it over with. And Reus Blades is reputable. You're not going to get ripped off by them. They have the actual authentic merchandise. So how about the value? The HatiOn costs about $100 more on Reus Blade than the Neon Light, which has the same steel and in the same configuration. The custom division of the HatiOn, I'll show a picture of it here, has a little bit different, and it's quite more expensive. It's about 3 times the cost of the production model. And it has a few changes, but I don't really think that it's worth it, the changes. They have a different back spacer, use the gear pattern like in the Hati. They had a little different milling pattern, much like that is on the Neon. You see the swooping lines on the show side, and then a little better milling on the scale side. And they have a different clip. They anodize the clip, the back spacer, and the pivot collar. The blade on the HatiOn is made of M390. On the HatiOn Custom Division, it's made of S90V. And on the Custom Division, they have a high flat ground as opposed to a full flat ground on the HatiOn. Personally, I like M390 and I like full flat ground blades, so it's not an advantage to me. So is the Custom Division version worth 3 times as much as the production vision? To me, no, but eye is in the beauty of the beholder. I'll let you make that decision. So what are my impressions of the Shirogorov HatiOn Light? I really like it. Are there opportunities for improvement? One of the things I could have improved was to have the same extensive milling on the sweeping lines on the clip side like the Shirogorov. See how they do a little better job on the milling on the Shirogorov Neon? They could have done that. And I understand they want to make it a little different, and they want to save more extensive milling for their custom division so they can charge a little bit extra. I just wish, since you are charging $100 more for this knife than for this knife, do the more extensive milling on the more expensive knife is what I say. The other thing is the availability. You'll find that it's very poorly available. You can check Recon 1, you can check Reus Blades, you can check from Russia with knives, and it's really hard to come across. I got the last one on the Reus Blades site, and I hope you guys can find one, but they're just not very available. What do I like about it? Basically everything. I like its lightness. The Neon Light was 3.2 ounces. The Neon Ultralight, which I have here, was 3 ounces even. And this comes in at 2.4 ounces. It shaved 0.8 ounces off of the similarly configured Neon Light. I love that lightness. I love the Shirogorov smoothness with the multi-row bearing system. It's just a joy to open and close. I like the pocket clip. It's 3D milled, fits in your pocket well. It's blindly screwed so they keep the mess on the inside. I like the blade. It's a simple drop point blade, full flat ground. They didn't overdo it. It's just a great cutting tool. And I like the markings, or lack thereof. They only have 2 markings. Their maker mark on the clip side, the Shirogorov Bear, and the steel designation on the other side. I like that they kept all the messy stuff on the inside. The screws on the pocket clip are on the inside. The cutout relief on the lock bore on the inside. The over travel stop, as opposed to Hinder, which puts theirs on the outside, they have all theirs hidden within the inside of the knife. I like it because of the simplicity of the design. And I like the hardware too. They use this proprietary hardware which can use a slotted screwdriver but still looks distinctive and classy. Well done. Well, what are my final assessments of the knife? To say that I like this knife is an understatement. I consider it not only to be the lightest and best of the Shirogorov knives, I consider it to be the lightest and best knife in the world. And I'll compare it to other knives that I really like. I consider the lightest and best low-end production knife to be the Zero Tolerance 0450. I really love this knife. I love this knife more. And there are fancy pants knives like the William Henry B7, and they use real gold overlays on their hardware and pivots, but really you can lose your man card for having something that looks like jewelry instead of a functional cutting tool. The Shirogorov HatiOn Light is the lightest and best knife in the world, bar none in my opinion. Let me know your opinion about it. Like and subscribe if you like the video, and we'll see you on the next House of Wisdom, lightest and best video.